Good morning, everyone. This morning we're going to continue with the CAD Manager series. We'll be talking today about customizing the user interface. And we'll kind of pick up from where we left off last week. The objectives this week are going to be learning how to customize the interface. So we'll look at how to create custom toolboxes, how to create tasks and workflows, how to create context menus, even update the MicroStation pull-down menus. So we'll try to touch on each of those and see how and where those can be customized at. To begin with, the topics we'll be talking about today can be done at a user level or at a site level. So if you're a user and you don't have rights to the server to do all the configuration for everyone, you can still do some customization on your own machine. In that case, all you would need to do is create a file named fdot.ss3.dgnlib and put it in the local fdot.ss3 workspace, interfaces, MicroStation, SS3 directory, and it's just automatically going to be read in anytime you start the FDOT workspace. Again, I'm referring to FDOT SS3 in this presentation, but it works the same for SS2, 2010, 2008. We've been using the same general concepts for quite a while. And the way that works is basically in the site fdot.txt, it's going to automatically load that dgnlib list in if it exists. If it doesn't exist, then it's just going to go on to the next line and load the next one. So that's really the only user-specific slide we're going to talk about today, because the rest of the concepts are going to be the same. It's just going to matter as to which file all of the customization is created in. Again, in this case, this is user level. If you're working at a site level, we looked at this last week. Basically, you would create a custom vars.txt and include the dgnlib you create. In this case, it could be any name because you're customizing, creating a custom vars text file and defining the path and the name of the file. And the key thing is that it must be in this variable, msdgnlib list, for the customize option to be available. There's also one other variable, ms underscore GUI lib list or something like that. And really the only difference is one is intended for only GUI stuff, and the dgnlib list can be used for GUI changes, level changes. Basically anything that can be stored in the dgnlib would get loaded through here. Technically it would get loaded in through the other way, so there's not really any difference in the variables. It's just the way they're intended to be used. So basically just store the path to your custom dgnlib in this variable, and it should load when the workspace loads. Okay, so speaking of the dgn libraries or the dgnlib files, like I said, they can store many types of resources: levels, custom line styles, all your other styles like text styles, dimension styles, print styles, and now going into Select Series 3 for the civil products, you can store things like civil cells, civil features, design standards. It's just continuing to grow. So there's a lot of things that can be embedded in the dgnlib. So you want to be very careful when you're doing this, not to embed resources into your dgnlib that would potentially conflict with those delivered with the FDOT software or MicroStation or Geopack. So you don't want to draw in the DGN lib, and if you do draw in the DGN lib, you want to be sure and delete the elements and compress any of those unwanted resources out, if necessary, because you'll wind up getting a conflict between the resources that get embedded in there and, say, potentially the next update of the FDOT software, something changes with a line style or a level or something, and then the one you have locally is different. It's just, I guess, a large opportunity for trouble there. So you want to try to avoid that wherever possible. So if the DGN lib is in that MSDGN lib list variable, and then you go to MicroStation and select Workspace Customize, you should get a dialog like this that comes up. And it will list your DGN lib name in under the user tools, and then under these various task menu bars, context menus, and such. That way you're able to select that and then create your custom content in that area. This is, if you don't have the DGN lib in that variable, it won't show up in this list and you won't be able to customize any of these. You'll notice that all of the other ones that get delivered are grayed out, they're read-only. You actually have to open up that DGN lib and create the content in there, and when you open it up, then it'll highlight that in color and give you the ability to add content. So we'll begin with talking about tools and toolboxes. These are really the building blocks for everything else that we'll be talking about today. They're real simple to create. Basically, the tools will store the various commands that you would want to execute, and then the toolboxes are used to organize those tools into a manner that would make sense to you. Then you can drag and drop both those tools and toolboxes into the other areas of the customized dialog to create tasks or context menus or whatever else it might be. And then basically when you do that, it creates a link to that original tool, making maintenance easier. You don't have to basically type in the same command in 5 different areas. You create the command once and then drag it in, and it'll link to that command. That way, if you have to change it in the future, you just change the tool and it links to that tool, so you don't have to go back and change it in the other locations as well. Toolboxes. Toolboxes are created basically in the left section of the customized dialog. With the toolbox, you can just right-click on the DGN lib name under User Tools, and then select New Toolbox, or you can click on the icon on the toolbar there with the looks like the little toolbar on there, and you can click there and it'll create a new toolbar as well. When you do that, the new toolbox is added below your insertion point. So if I was to right click down here and say New Toolbox, then it would create the toolbox under the editor. So just remember, it's going to insert that toolbox below wherever your selection is at that point. Toolboxes, the names must be unique. They can really be in any length. They can have spaces and stuff in them, but they cannot contain the backslash character. So just name them appropriately so you can easily find them, and when you're dragging them into your other areas, and it'll make it just a lot easier to work with. Custom tools, they can be set up in much the same way And they're used to help you draw things, help you adjust settings. You can run other applications. You can open up web pages. You can open up documents. Really, it's up to you. Basically, anything that you can do from the MicroStation key-in window, you can include in a toolbox or in a tool that'll get placed on a toolbox. So when you create a tool, it works in much the same way. You can just say right-click on a toolbox that you want to add it to, select New Tool, or select that toolbox and click on the New Tool icon, which is the second icon there in the toolbar. And then it'll create a new toolbox and prompt you to enter a name for that toolbox. Naming is much the same. The difference here is that the tool has to be unique in its toolbox. So you could have the same tool name here and here, but you couldn't have two tools on the same toolbox with the same name. And they also can't contain a backslash character. Okay. So when you create that tool, you can then select it, and then this is where you enter the different properties that make the tool function and appear as you wish. So you could basically in the field, the properties field in the bottom of the dialog, you can enter a key in. By default, you're gonna get a little wrench-looking icon, and this default settings will come in looking like this. So it'll have null for a key in. You could basically just click in there, add any key in you want. The balloon text you see here is basically the tooltip. So when your mouse goes over the icon, whatever text you put in the tooltip will, or the balloon text will appear as a tooltip over the icon. The associate template and template pass, typically I don't use those. That's, I guess, if you were using it to set an element template and a path to an element template that gets used anytime you're, say, if you had a place line command or something here, they could be used for that. But if you're calling up things like just running, opening a web page or calling another tool, then you can just leave those as their default settings. The icon, you can change the icon file. You can pull icons from other DGN libs. You can pull them from icon files on the system. You can create them as BMP files and import them. Or you can grab icons from just other MicroStation tools. So there's many different ways you can choose icons in there, and as we get into it and start looking at that, you'll see some of the options. Excuse me. And then basically tool presentation just determines how the tool will be displayed, whether you want it to be displayed just as an icon with a label beside it, just a label, just various options depending on how you want it to appear in the toolbox. And basically, like the dimensions down at the bottom, you have the option there to define this. Typically, you'll want it set to both for most tools. But so let's say you have a tool that is intended for use only in 3D. Basically, the dimension, you have options of 2D, 3D, or both. So if you want the tool to only function in 3D or only appear in 3D, then you could choose 3D in that field, and it'll set that property on for that tool as well. Okay, so before we move on to the next one, we'll go ahead and look in MicroStation and experiment with some of this. Excuse me. So in MicroStation, I've gone in and just picked up where we left off last week. we were looking at a file called engcorp interface.dgnlib. We had added that to a custom vars.txt file. So when I open up the FDOT SS3 and browse and select that file, I should have the ability to go to Workspace, Customize, and then that DGNLib should show up under User Tools. And it does. And you'll see in here I've got a few tools that I created along the way that we can use as examples for the screenshots and all that you'll see in the presentation today. But we'll recreate some of those tools as an example. So you'll notice that we've got this toolbox here called engcorp, and if I expand this, you'll see it's got a print to PDF tool, a signal cell tool, and then another toolbar or toolbox underneath that toolbox, which has 3 additional tools to pull up different editors: Notepad, Notepad, and Word. And you'll see how it appears here, it appears over there, and I basically reused kind of that logic throughout the workspace as examples. So what we'll do is we'll recreate this with a new name, and so you can see some of the steps to do that. We'll start here. I'll just right click on the DGNLib and I will select New Toolbox, and we'll just call this our webinar toolbox. And then we'll create some tools in there. So I'll just right click here and we'll say new tool and add a tool to that toolbox. And you'll see how as soon as I right click it and select that option, it gives me the option there to go ahead and give this a name. And we'll just recreate the tool to open up what do we want to open? Let's create a tool that will open up a cell web page. So in this case, we'll open up, let's just say, the signing cell web page. Excuse me. So now we've got a tool with a name. It's called Signing Cells, and we need to define the properties to create the actions for that tool. Also, when you're going in wanting to see how these things appear, you can right click on the toolbar and say Open Toolbox, and you can open that toolbox while you're creating it and test it while you're creating it. Like right now when I click on it, it's doing nothing because there's no action. It's just sending a null command. If I was to give this any other command, AC equals sh plan, for example, just a regular microstation key in. As soon as I click save, and now if I click on this, it's going to automatically execute that command. So this is a good way to test your tools and toolboxes as you're working through them. But in this case, we want to create a link to one of the FDOT cell web pages. I called this webinar. This could just be a toolbar that we're going to use for our internal signing department as a collection of tools that they typically use. So let's just rename this, and we'll call this engcorp signing. And you can tell we're just winging it here today. And so that'll create the toolbar. If we go in now and say Open Toolbox, now you see the title says engcorp signing. I've got this. We can go back to the tool. So what I need to do is figure out which key in to execute for that. To do that, if you want to call things off of the FDOT menu, just to organize them in toolbars in whatever manner you want, if you go to any of the tools on the menu and then watch down in the status bar, as you mouse over those tools, it gives you the command that gets executed when you use that tool. So in this case, we want to open a cell web page, so we're going to have that CAD pilot UI, URL, and then the path to the web page that we want to open up there. So instead of typing all that and working through all my typos, I'm just going to steal the one that we had in there as an example for the text, and then we'll update that one. So you can see how you can work between and expand and cut and paste from tools and so forth. In this case, I just need to figure out what the cell library name is, so I'll just go to the cell web pages, and we'll look at the signing payment marking. So let's just do the MUTCD in this for this case. So I'll just grab the name of that cell web page and link to that one. And we can rename this to MUTCD cells as well. Okay, so now basically we've got a command that should open up the cell web page through the CAD pilot web browser, and it does. And the reason why I want to do that through the CAD pilot web browser is because this gives me the ability to execute MicroStation commands through the web page. You'll notice if I mouse over this and look in the status bar of the browser, it's going to go ahead and execute the command for CAD pilot to set the scale and attach the cell and then place the cell. So it has commands built in the web pages as well. Okay, so we've got that. We can give it a tooltip, so we'll say MU web page. I should say cells, just to make sure we're not going to the MUTCD site itself. And now if I mouse over that, you'll see how it adds the tooltip. If I want to change the icon, I can click here. And in this case, I've already got some icons in the current design file. But if you have a new design file, you wouldn't have any in there. So you can choose from other locations. You can choose from applications, and if I choose that, basically I can go down and pick an icon from one of the current tools. I can choose from different resource files that it's found in the list. I can select a bitmap that I've created, so if I went out and created my own icon, or I can import icons from icon files like a Windows icon file or whatever. In this case, I've just got some different icon files out here, and we'll just pick anything for this example. So just pick this and say done. And then I can select this and I can give it a new name if I want to associate it with that. So I can just say MUTCD and say OK. And now that will create an MUTCD icon in there. I obviously didn't choose well because it doesn't show up very good on this. Let's pick another one that'll maybe show up a little bit better. That's a cell web page, so let's just pick one of those and then import that. That's still not showing up there. Let's pick one from an application. I know that works because that's what some of the icons you see on the other toolbar are. Let's just for sake pick that one. There we go. So you see how it should update the icon there, and it should show up over here. It just wasn't importing that icon file into the DGN Lib for some reason. And then I've got the choice as to whether to show just the icon only, like that, to where you would have the tooltip, the icon and the label, or the label only. So basically that's your different options. I'm just going to pick icon and label for now, and then we can go on. So basically you could keep doing that and create additional tools. You can also create additional toolboxes under there, and we can just call this signing tools, and then if we click off of it, it should update the toolbar. Let's close it and reopen it. Oh, I don't have any tools on there yet. So let's add another tool under there. So here we could say add a new tool and open. I don't have guide sign installed, for example, but you could say guide sign. And then enter the MDL load and then the guide sign application name. And then you would have a tool there to launch guide sign from your toolbar. You create another one to launch draw sign, create another one to launch any other applications, external applications related to signing that you wanted there. Now if we go to this and say open toolbox, you notice we've got this, then we've got a drop down for the additional toolbox. So when you embed toolboxes, that's how you get tools like this with the little arrows on them. This is a toolbox embedded. You'll notice this is the manipulate toolbox, which is embedded in the main task toolbox. So that's how you get the drop downs within toolboxes. Okay, so basically you see how you can create tools, you can create toolboxes, and you would go through and basically repeat these steps to build up the toolboxes for your site, your company, if you're doing this as a user, for your personal user interface, just to organize things in a manner that works better for you. You can get all those set up in this area, and then we're going to use those to create other tasks, menus, context menus, and so forth. So I just wanted to spend some time going over that. Okay, so that we've covered the tool properties. Next we'll talk about the menu bar. MicroStation allows you to customize its menu bar. Basically you can add your own menu to go along the top of MicroStation there. And it even allows you to remove menu items, if you're the CAD manager and you don't want to use specific tools. Then you can actually go in and remove options from the MicroStation menus in your custom DGN Lib as well. And in this example here, you'll see I've added a ENG Corp and basically drug in those toolboxes that I was creating and created a menu from those toolboxes. There's some options to this as well. I've just listed out a few here, but there's just basically some capabilities you can turn on, and this is more for the CAD manager for testing and troubleshooting purposes. This USTN capability, UI load from active file. This is what you can use to load, I guess, toolboxes, any type of UI customization from a current DGN file that is not in the MSDGN lib list. So we went in and added it to that variable. If a file wasn't added to the variable and you just wanted to see what it what type of customization was in it, you could use just this variable to open up that file and see it available in the workspace customized toolbox. The UStation capability, the ignore menus from DGN Lives. This is basically used if you want to hide all customizations. So if you're troubleshooting an issue on a user's machine and you don't know where exactly, or even if an issue is going on in the customizations, you can basically just pop this variable in the UCF and it'll disable all those customizations, and you can make sure it's functioning, with the out-of-the-box stuff. And then you've also had this other option here to ignore menus from the resource files. And basically this is if you want to ignore the old interface files. I know many of you probably remember the old what was it, UO1, MO1 files where you used to create the dialogues and the toolboxes and all. This is what, if you put this in, it'll ignore any of those old files and only read in the DGN libraries for user customization. And that one can actually be pretty handy because those old resource type customizations were a little tricky, to say the least. In fact, I would recommend, if you are still carrying those forward, just take a little bit of time, an hour or whatever. I mean, you can see how easy this is to do. Just take a little time, go ahead and bring those forward into a DGN Live, and you're going to find that they play nicer with the environment. They're easier to maintain. They're easier to bring forward. For example, if we went from SS2, I created one of these for SS2 and wanted to put it in SS3, all I would have to do is either rename my local file from FDOT SS2.dgnlive to FDOT SS3.dgnlive, and then I'm up and working with my new, or actually my old customization in my new workspace. So they're really easy to, and portable. Context menus. Context menus give you the ability to add menus on the right click. So in MicroStation, if you're working and you right click in the design plane somewhere in the black space, you can add options, and you've got a few different ways and areas you can add them, but basically you can add options to the top, you can add options to the bottom. And again, you can see I've brought that same theme forward, where I just was able to drag and drop toolboxes over to the context menu and make them available there as well. I talk a little bit about named expressions here. This is named expressions give you the ability to conditionally show menu options, and I'll show you an example of some of those, but they can be very complex, and we wouldn't have nearly enough time in today's presentation to get into that in any detail. So I'll show you an example of how you can conditionally show options on the menu, and then you can always hit F1 on your keyboard, look up named expressions, and you can see basically how to create named expressions for any of your customizations. And just like the others, with the context menus, when you drag those over into here, you have the ability to, it's going to have some properties by default for the key in, or if you drag them over, it'll provide a link to the menu. But you also have additional properties. So in any of these customizations, if you just right click down in the properties area, either on one of these title bars, or just say down here in the open gray space, you'll get a context menu based on which area you're editing. In this case, it gives me the option to add a icon to the menu. So I could put my company icon on my context menu, or an icon for that type of menu, say a sign for signing, a traffic signal for signals, and so forth. Just whatever you see or not, it's not a big deal. It's just another option. You also have these tests where you can add a show hide test. Basically, you can say, just like the example, if this is a 3D model, you can test for that, and if it's not, you can hide it. If it is, you can enable it. So you've got those options as well. Pop-up menus. Pop-up menus are real similar to the context menus. Basically, the difference is the keystrokes needed to access them. You've got the view pop-up menu that you get when you hold shift and then right-click. You'll get a different set of menus. By default, this is your different view attributes, but you could add really any tools you wanted to on there. You also have what they call tentative pop-up menus. So when you hold shift and then use your tentative keystroke, by default it's going to be your left and right mouse click. So if you do all three of those at the same time, then you'll have another pop-up menu that has additional context menus that you can define. So basically you can have 3 different sets of menus that you can access with the various click options. Okay, and then let's go look at some of that stuff before we get into tasks. I just wanted to get through the various menus, and then we can go in and look at those. So first of all, we'll start out with the main menu. You can see up here we've got this ENG Corp. So if I look under the, under menu bar, I should see all of the options we see up here. So I'll see file, edit, and so forth. And if we scroll down, subsurface utility engineering, help, and then the ENG Corp. And if I expand this, we'll just kind of look, and this dialog is sizable, so you can reorder that to best see what's going on in there. If we go in and select some of these, you can see like when I select the tool, it's got a tool path. You'll get this when you link tools. If I were to just right click and say add a new menu item, and you'll notice I right click on everything in here. That's what I find is the easiest way to create different toolboxes, menus, context. Just right click anywhere in here and you're going to get some kind of options. So I'm just going to right click on the ENG Corp menu, and we'll add one manually for this to recreate this signing, just so you can see the difference. I'll say let's add a new menu, and we'll say this is going to be the signing, ENG signing, and then we can, as soon as I do that, I'm just going to do this, and I put that under ENG Corp, so it's going to show up as a sub-menu to that, and right now there's nothing on it. So now we can add a tool to that, and I can just right click on that sub-menu and say add a new menu item, and then we can just say MUTCD cells, and if we, then if we select that, now we've got the options here for the key in to create a shortcut if we want, and we'll look at that. So I'm just going to go and steal the key in off of this other tool, and we'll place it right in here. And so now when we come here and it just wants to refresh itself, is why it went back behind there. And once you get it set and dock everything, it'll stay and remember everything. So now when I go to ENG Corp signing and click on that, you see it creates the key in. I should have gave it the name, and this is click a second time to edit. MUTCD cells. Okay, enter to accept, so it remembers that. And so now that should have that on there. And so that's basically how you can you could recreate all of this manually in here, just like you did over there. But the disadvantage of doing it that way is, say the name of the cell web page changes to new MUTCD HTM. Well, now I'm going to have to go into this tool and fix it over there, and then I'm going to have to go over here and fix it. If I got it in context menus, I'm going to have to fix it there. If I got it in tasks, I'm going to have to fix it there. So you're really better off to, I'm just going to delete this. Again, you see I right click on it. It kind of disappeared on me there. I think that's a display issue from the GoToWebinar. I just right clicked on it to get the delete options. I can move it up, I can move it down in the list. I can add a separator, basically like these lines between the different options. I could add separators in there. I can rename. So you got all of the different options you can do to those from there. But instead of manually recreating it, if I just drag and drop it on that menu option, basically it's going to still create that link. It's still going to be available here with the same name I had over here. If I click it, it's still going to function. You notice it even brought over the icon. But instead of having to update those paths, it basically creates a link back to this. So if that web page changes in the future, I only need to come over here and modify that name, and it's going to basically ripple through all of the other places I use that. We got a question here asking if you can import and export from the library. Bob answered that. It says you can share it with other users. Also, I can copy from other libraries. So if I wanted to import or create a new library and import from an old one, I could just include them both in the DGN lib list. Like say this was my old one, I could just come down here and copy this tool or toolbox from here. I can copy things from there and then move them up into my own toolbox. I can drag also from there and link from other tools. So if I just if FDOT has already done some customization to create toolboxes, but you just didn't like the organization and want to create your own toolbar, there's no use to recreate the stuff we did. You could just drag it onto your menu as well. So that's another option. Now if we look under ENG Corp, you'll see I've got the right-of-way tools. So there was no need to go and recreate all of that as well. So just remember the linking not only to things in your DGN lib, but you can link to external DGN libs. I could copy from external DGN libs. So that would be probably the best way to handle that. Okay, and now if we go back, he's asking the next question is how do you send a shortcut letter, and that's kind of where we got sidetracked before. So if we go over to the menus, you notice you don't have that option on the toolbox. But if we go to the menu, just like all these menus here, if you look under File, it's got these shortcut options. So if you hit Control P, it's going to print. If you say Control N, you're going to get a new file. Control O to open. If we wanted to add a shortcut like that to one of these tools, and let's just pick one of them out here. We'll create one of them that we just did here. So say we wanted to create a shortcut to our MUTCD cell web pages. You'll see an option down here in the properties for shortcut. By default, it's not going to set one, but if you click on the drop down arrow, I can say anytime I hit Control and say the letter M. Now notice it didn't give me the OK here, so that means that that one's already being used. But if I say Control Alt and M, it gives me the OK button, so I know that one's not in use. So if I hit OK there, and now if I just come over in the design plane, set basically I want to get into a home state. So if I hit escape on the keyboard, you notice I'm in home state. And say if I hit, what did I say, Control Alt and M, it opens up the cell web page or executes whatever command is in that tool. So you can create keyboard shortcuts for any of the tools that you have in here. Okay. So I think that's pretty much covered it for the menu bar. Let's go on and look at the context menus. And again, we've created the building blocks over here, so the concepts are going to be the same for a lot of these. I can go in and basically go to my ENG Corp DGN Lib, right click, say new context menu, and then enter that for, let's just say, signing again. And then put a tool under there, new menu item, and that display's kind of freaking out. I'm gonna have to start using the toolbar up there, and we'll just call this one MUTCD as well. And basically you could recreate this, so now when I come over here, I got ENG signing and MUTCD, and basically all I'm doing is right clicking in the design plane. I'm going to delete this, and I'm never going to remember not to right click and use these. I could do it all manually, or like I said before, we could just drag things from over here. So if I've got this signing thing here, I can just drag that whole toolbar over on the context menu. Now I've got that there, and when I right click on the design plane, I've got signing and I've got my cells, and I've also got any other toolbars that were embedded in there would come out as submenus. So that's what I say, these are your building blocks. You want to spend a lot of time getting these like you want, and then it makes it really easy to replicate that through the user interface. So again, you've seen how we've done the menus. The context menus work similarly. Same thing with the view pop-up menus and the tentative pop-up menus. Again, the only difference there is if I hold shift and right click, I'm going to get basically these options, and if I added stuff to the view pop-up menus, it would show up at the top of there. So if we'll just create one as an example. We'll pick the editors and just drop there. So now if I go here, you'll notice I'm holding shift, I right click, now I've got editors, and I can launch any of those editors from there just by clicking on it. Notepad. Oops, I was in a command. Editors, notepad. And where did it go? It must have popped up. Yeah, see, I've started several of them now. It was just popping up on the other screen. So I'll shut those down. So that's basically how those context menus, view pop-up menus, and tentative menus work. With the tentative, again, it's just shift and then your mouse cord for your tentative, and you will get a context menu for that. Okay, so now let's go back to the PowerPoint and we'll talk a little bit about tasks. Tasks are basically the box that runs along the left of your screen by default. Again, you can customize those as you desire to add your own tasks to the menu. And you'll notice in FDOTSS3 that we've spent a lot more time creating workflows and options in the tasks. Before, basically the tasks that we made available were just cells, but we've got more into creating workflows. And basically the only difference between a task and a workflow is really just the icon that's shown and the concept that they're intended to be used. Basically a task is a group of tools or toolboxes, and a workflow is a very selective group of tools. So you might have a toolbox with all your socket wrenches in it, but if you're changing the plugs, you really only need the ratchet, the extension, and this spark plug socket. You don't need the whole toolbox. So you would create a workflow that says change spark plugs, and it would only include those 3 tools, so you don't have to pick through all of those. That's really the concept behind the difference between tasks and workflows. But basically, if you create a task, it's going to reference those tools in and make them available on the task menu. It could be standard MicroStation tools that you drag in there. It could be any custom stuff, just like you've seen before. That's why I recommended just creating the toolboxes and dragging those in there for management purposes. And then you've got the main task, and basically the main task is the little row of tools that is available on the top of the task menu. By default, if you don't define a main task for a task, you'll just get the default MicroStation tool. So you'll have element select, the place fence tools, the modify tools, and all those that you typically have up there, measurements and things. So if you don't do anything, those are the ones you'll have up there. If you create a set of, basically if you create a task that you want to use as a main task, you can assign that main task to any other task menu. So when you open that task, it'll also include your custom main task above your task. That's just a I guess a way to customize the tools that, oops, I was going to go back to MicroStation. The tools that show up above here. So like here, I'm seeing the standard MicroStation stuff. Like if I went to task and say main classic, you notice I'm seeing all the same tools. If I wanted a special set of custom tasks for when I run, you'll notice that the icon here has got a little, I don't know, like a ball running up a hill there. If I click on that, I created a custom task, but I also have a custom main task assigned to that. So you notice how this changed then. So on this one, I got element selection, place fence, the measure tools, but at the end I can run Sheet Navigator and I can launch Link Data Manager. So when I'm creating typical sections, I want to set the scale, I want to place my sheet cell, I want to place my typical section cell, and link any notes in with Link Data Manager and run Sheet Navigator to label the sheet and so forth. So that would be all the tools that I would typically need on there. And these are tools on tasks. These are common tools that you would want to have available with any of your tasks. So it wouldn't necessarily be in here. I'd want these same tools available if I'm creating any sheet, right? I want to be able to link notes, and I want to be able to run Sheet Navigator to label the border. So I want those tasks available on any other tasks I create or workflows I create to create sheets. So that's how that can be managed. So let's go ahead and look at that. If we go to the task option now, we've gone through all the ones below. Now if we go to the task option and look under user tasks and this DGN lib, you'll see I've got the ENG Corp and typical sections in there right now, and that's what we were just looking at here. If I click back up here and just go to main classic, you'll notice all that switches back to the default. So let's go ahead and create one for the signing stuff. Again, I could do all this manually, or I can just drag and drop that right on my DGN lib. Now it automatically updates, so I've got an ENG Corp signing task. If I expand that, I've got the tools that I've got available on that ENG Corp signing toolbox over here. And that's really all it is. Now you can go and set properties on that as well. Like if I wanted this to be a workflow instead of a task, I can set different properties. And again, by default, when I drag it over, I'm just going to get, okay, it's dimension both. I want it to work in both 2D and 3D files. If I wanted additional properties, I can right click on that and say add an icon to it. I can just do some icon display settings. Again, I've got the show and hide tasks. We'll just look at that real quick just so you can see what I'm talking about. It's got some basic stuff for the 2D and 3D, but you can also get a lot more detailed. You can get model properties, is activated reference. So you only want to use this, say, if you're in a key sheet and the key map's active or something. Then that would be the only time that would be available. So you can get really complex, really detailed. I just haven't found a whole lot of need for that. Typically, you know when you build a toolbox or a task what you're going to be wanting to use that for, and you put the appropriate tools in there. So I'm just going to remove that. But I could say I want this to add this task as a workflow, and if I set this property to true, then you'll see that's basically how you change the icon. And you can see that's the extent of the difference between a task and a workflow. It's more a conceptual difference than an actual functional difference. Okay, so that is that. Now let's say if we look at that now and go into the ENG Corp signing, you see how it's still using the default menu. If I was using this to place sheets or whatever and I wanted to apply a main task to that, I can add that property here. So I can again just right click, add a main task, and in that property basically I can click and then browse to any task that I want to add as main. I created basically a toolbox over here called ENG Main Classic that sort of replicates the default one, because I always want to use element selection. I want to be able to place fences. I want to be able to manipulate things. But there were some tools on here that I didn't always need. So I took those off and then I added Sheet Navigator and LDM. So I could then come in and add that to as my main task path. So now when I come back over here and say if I'm in main classic, I see this. If I switch to the ENG Corp signing, now I get that custom main task with the tools I want to see all the time, plus Sheet Navigator and LDM. Okay. So you can see how it's all right there. You can add properties, you can remove properties. It's all basically right-click and it's right at your fingers. It's easy to customize. One thing I didn't really go over was, you've seen how we can add icons to tools. Actually, it was over here in the tools. I should point where I'm speaking to. You've seen where we can add icons here. You can also import icons into the active DGN library on the icons tab. So I could come in here, I could say import icons, and then choose what source I want to import them from. If I want, icon files, bitmaps, and so forth. So if I went out to icon files, you can, and most of the times, like applications, say like Notepad++ or Word or anything, typically if the application has an icon, most of the time they're going to embed it in the application file. If it's a large application that has a lot of different icons, then sometimes they'll have a separate icon file that they provide that you could browse and select, which is the way Word does it. But like if Notepad++, if I click and choose from there, actually I probably should have chosen a different option. DLLs and exe files, and then pick Notepad++. You see they've got a lot of icons available in there. So that's one place, if you're linking to an application, you can always check there. Again, if you need to create your own icons from bitmaps, or you say you download icons from the internet, basically you can import all of those into your DGN library and then have them available a little bit easier to use by just going to here, and instead of browsing all around, once you get them all imported, you can just say look in my current design file and then choose the icon from your current design file. So that's basically how the icon tab works. Okay, so let's go back and make sure I haven't forgotten anything. So we talked about the main task and looked at how those worked. I've got a little bit ahead here. I showed you how you can right-click down in the Properties field and add a main task, and then choose a custom-built task menu just for that main task. And that's really the extent of today's presentation. So it looks like all the questions have been caught up. I want to thank everybody for participating there and getting those questions in. Next week we will go into basically customizing your printing for your site. So a CAD manager should be able to create print styles, create print drivers, pin tables, and all that, and then have them set up for quick and easy use for the users. It just makes them more efficient with just a couple clicks they can have a print. So we'll look at some different concepts on how to accomplish that next week. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Have a good day, and we look forward to seeing you next week then.